For the first time in the last 11 years, Brisbane has just had a double-digit growth year.
Woo! Finally.
It's been a long time coming, so in today's video, we wanted to share 10 of the reasons why we like Brisbane and we're actively investing there personally at the moment. Now, the first reason we like Brizzy at the moment is Westpac has just recently come out and said that they expect Brisbane between 2021 and 2022 to do 20% price growth.
It'll be interesting because the second one was Commonwealth Bank's predictions for 2021 and 2022, where they believe that Brisbane will increase by about 17.5%. So we'll see who ends up on the top there. Hopefully Westpac.
Yeah, hopefully Westpac. From a third data perspective, we absolutely love the guys over at CoreLogic. Tim Lawless and his team do incredible data collection and then use that data. Now, they're sort of saying or suggesting back in 2018 that between 18 and 2022, Brisbane would be Australia's top performing market. Now, it looks unlikely at this stage because some of the markets like Hobart and Canberra have gone off their head, but you know, whether it's the top market or it's in the top 5, everyone would be happy with that anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And then, you know, one of the things that was really interesting is Heron Todd White's most recent update, where they put Brisbane in the rising stage of the real estate cycle, which is great. But one other thing that I noticed in the most recent May edition was that every single market in Queensland was somewhere between the rising stage of the property cycle or approaching the peak of the market.
It was crazy to see that report actually because so much of Australia was just loaded in that one position last month.
There was nowhere in the declining phase or bottom of the market. It's crazy.
You know, another thing that's interesting about Brisbane from our perspective is that the Australian Bureau of Statistics estimates that Brisbane will be the size of Sydney or Melbourne, 5 million people within about 27 to 30 years from today. Now, that's exciting to me because incomes in Brisbane are already higher per household than Melbourne and just below Sydney now, which means if the population gets to that size, the prices can get to that size as well.
Yeah, and last year alone in 2020, there was over 30,000 people that moved into Queensland, which was the highest amount of people moving to any state in Australia, which is obviously great because we had no international population growth, but having that interstate population growth in Queensland is obviously putting a bit more pressure on the market.
You know, that's resulted in the vacancy rates absolutely falling through the floor. Like we're talking 0.5% in most of the suburbs we're buying at the moment, people sleeping in cars that have moved across the border. Like it's extremely tight, which has resulted in houses increasing by somewhere between $30 to $100 a week in terms of rent returns this year alone.
That's crazy.
Now, Simon and I were digging through the Australian Bureau of Stats data and looking at something from Michael Matusik recently, and we were blown away with this. So over the next 20 years and the next 10 years, they're expecting 75% of Australia's job, population and income growth to be split between Sydney, Melbourne and Southeast Queensland, with 25% in each area. Now, that is massive, and as an investor, for me personally, I want to be following the jobs, the incomes and the population.
Like 3 markets that are taking the lion's share, 75% of Australia's population, job and income growth is crazy. Now, that only leaves 25% if you're not very good at maths for the rest of Australia.
And 8% is going into Perth. So it's like, you know, I don't bet against the house, and where the jobs, the infrastructure and money is flowing is where I'll be putting my money. They are also the markets that have historically performed the best as well.
Now, the next one was looking at the longer term performance of Brisbane, where Homely actually broke down the year-on-year performance of all the capital cities in Australia from 1970 through to 2016. And what we found is that Brisbane has increased at an average of 9.6% over the last 46 years, which is absolutely insane.
Incredible. Now, as you guys know, we're huge Phil Anderson and Fred Harrison fans, and what I did when I looked at their 18.6 year real estate cycle and then overlaid the next 5 or 6 years in Brisbane, historically Brisbane has performed extremely well, as has places like Perth and Adelaide in the coming 5 or 6 years in the second half of their real estate cycle. Again, that helps me build confidence and a bit of structure around the timing of my investments.
For sure. And then the last thing, which is the last bit because it's not 100% confirmed while we're recording this video, is the fact that Brisbane's likely going to get 2032 Olympics, which is going to be really massive for the area. I think you were saying that it's going to bring about 150,000 jobs to the region, massive infrastructure growth. We looked at the performance in Sydney from 1997 through to 2003 when it had the Olympics in 2000, and year on year it performed unbelievably well down there because of the Olympics.
This stuff's all exciting for us. It's a whole lot of data to support the decisions that we're making at the moment. Now, it's not to say that other markets aren't going to do extremely well as well, but we like Brisbane from an income perspective, an infrastructure perspective, a jobs perspective, a population perspective. All of the things are heading in the right direction. We also love the fact that after looking at the DSR data, markets, especially the capital cities and major regional markets that have done worse in the last 10 years seem to do better in the 10 years after that. And markets that have done better in the last 10 years seem to do worse in the 10 years. And it makes sense. There's a limit or a ceiling on how much people can afford. And while Sydney is dirt cheap at $1 million for the world, it is very, very expensive if you're earning $100,000, where if you're earning the same 100K in Brisbane and you can buy a house for 350 to 600K, it feels a little bit more affordable and you can continue on with your life. So we hope you've enjoyed this video. For those of you thinking about Brisbane seriously, we run a buyer's agency up here, Pumped on Property. We bought over $250 million worth of property in the last 5 years up here. We would love to have a strategy session with you. If you jump over to our website, www.pumpedonproperty.com, we can talk about where you are now, where you'd like to be in the future. We can educate you on the market, and then you can go and smash it on your own with our data and our research, or you can potentially become one of the small number of people we work with each month. But either way, we wish you all the best. Please stay safe. Brisbane is not one market. Some parts of the city have crushed it in the last 10 years. Other parts are literally cheaper than they were 13 years ago. So figure out the city, find the right part of the city, the right suburb, the right street, and then go and confidently buy the right product for your family or as an investment for your future.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Oh, sweaty. So sweaty.